Hey everyone, I'm Jolly from Vanderkamper Ventures, and this video I'm going to do a walkthrough guide on how to program the Renogy Inverter Charger. If you have the manual and you've gone through the manual and you're a bit stuck and you don't really understand what some of the settings and stuff mean, this video is done to kind of go through and kind of put into layman terms the settings that are in this manual. So how I've set it up, it is a walkthrough guide, so you can just pause it at each setting and kind of set as you go through. The only things I will not cover in this video are the custom battery settings in program 5 and the contactor settings. Now they're a bit more in depth, so this video won't cover those, but I will do a separate video which I'll link to in this one. So if you need to do the custom settings for your battery or the contacts, I'll put a link to those videos in the description. The other thing, depending what manual you've got, this is version 1.1, it does say there. Now the other manual is version 3, and there are differences in some of the program settings, which I will cover when we get to that point. So if you've got this manual and some settings don't make sense, then I will explain why. If you're still a bit stuck or you don't really want to do the settings and programming yourself, I offer a service that I can do all that for you. So basically, if you fill the form out, send it to me, I will tell you the exact settings to set. So just go through, click a few buttons, job done, it's all done with that. Just follow the link to the website, fill out the form, and then, like I say, send it to me. Now I get asked a lot if they can just use the default settings. Now most of the programs you'll leave at default anyway, but I'd highly recommend you go through each setting, thoroughly learn what the settings mean and set it up exactly for your system. And it's going to work as efficiently as you can, which is what you want in a van, isn't it? So what this video is like I say, it's a quite simple walkthrough, and I'll give my recommendations. So if you don't know a lot of the stuff, that's fine. I'll just recommend what's best to set it at, really. And I'll include as much information without boggling your mind too much. Okay, so without further ado, let's do some programming. So the first thing you want to do is press and hold this button here, and it will make a horrendous noise, so we're going to deal with that. So go straight to number 18. Oops. And then be on to be off. Oh. And that gets rid of the buzzer, which is the most annoying thing about this inverter charger. So now that is off. So to get into the settings, like I've just shown you, you press and hold this enter part here. So press it for about 3 seconds. It takes you straight into the menu. And then all you do is click up and down. So if you just click up, that goes through the menus, and down, back through the menus. And then you can either go to escape and click enter, or just press back here, and that takes you back to this screen. Before we do any programming, there's 2 settings that will make it just a bit easier for you. So if you do the same again, go into your settings menu, and then you want to go to number 19 and switch this one to TEP. I'm already set on it now, so the other setting is ESP. So what TEP is, it means that this will stay on the screen that you leave it on. So if you leave it to, I don't know, go make a cup of tea or sit around thinking what setting you need, it'll stay on the screen. It won't keep going back to the start. So set 19 to TEP. The other setting is 20. Set that to LON, and all that does, that's the LCD mode screen. So LON means that the LCD screen will stay on, and then we can turn it off once we've done all the settings, just to save a little bit of power. Set that to L on. So I'll go back to the start. Okay, so we'll go back into the settings again and we'll start with setting number 1, so program 1. So this setting, you have utility and battery priority. So that's utility and that is battery priority. Now generally you're going to stick to utility priority. Now what that means is when you're on hookup, the hookup is going to power your loads and charge the battery, and when you're not on hookup, the battery is going to power your loads and there's going to be no battery charge. This is just your typical setting really. So obviously when you're on hookup, you're going to get battery charging and all your loads are powered. Now if you set this one to SBU, that's battery priority. Now what that means is when you're on hookup, the batteries are going to continue to power your loads. So even though you're on hookup, there's going to be no change at all until the battery reaches a low voltage set point, which we can set later on. So once the battery reaches a low voltage set point, then the loads are powered by the AC hookup, but there's still no battery charge. So the one reason why you could do this is the battery could be full all the time. It could be running on solar or a generator or anything, so they could be fully charged. So you don't actually need to charge the battery. I've got this set to utility priority. So the next setting is number 3, which is your AC input voltage range. Now the default is UPS, and that's generally what you're going to stick to in a camper van really. It's for sensitive electronic appliances like computers, TVs, camera chargers, phones, you know, things like that. The only reason you'd switch to APL, so if I click enter and go to APL, this is for specific equipment that requires a larger tolerance. So the output you can drop to 23% or over or plus 15% of the voltage. Now typically you're not really going to use anything like this in a camper van really. It's to do with like motors or generators and things like that. So unless your equipment specifically asks for like a wider tolerance, stick with UPS. Program 4 is your power saving mode. Now personally I wouldn't bother with this. I'd leave it to SDS, which is default, which is disable. So what this does is if it's disabled, the inverter is available at all times. So if you plug something in, you're going to get power and it's going to work. If you set it to, let's change it to SEN, which means the power saving mode is enabled, the inverter will turn on when it senses more than 50 watts is being drawn from it. Now the only pain with this is I was sort of charging a phone and at one point trying to charge my laptop and it came on, then it went off, and it came on and then it went off, and it was just a bit annoying. So we basically just switch it off. If we need inverter power, we need it all the time. For my advice, I would leave it to SDS. Program 5 is your setup battery type. Now, if you go into this, there's all different ones. So obviously you've got B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, L, which is lithium, and 0, which is custom, which is what we are. Most battery types now, if you're using lithium, will be on the custom one. And as I said at the start, I'm not going to go too much into detail with custom in this video. I'll do a separate short video for custom, which is what we've got ours set to. So if you need to know about custom settings, I'll put the link to this video in the description. So with number 5, we get asked a lot, like, why would you use custom? Well, as you can see here from the manual, the different battery types. So if I switch to, let's just show you. So B1, if we select that one, so that's selecting a gel 1 battery. Now the boost voltage is 14 volts and the float voltage is 13.7. They're preset. With your battery, there'll be a specification and you need to check what the boost voltage and float voltage are and to ensure that they match. If they don't match what's actually preset, you're most likely going to need to do a custom battery setup. And like I said, I can go into more detail of this in the other video. If you need further help with anything to do with custom battery settings, I will put a link to the website in the description where I can design a program for you. So if you just send me the battery details, I can then send you the exact program settings, so you know, you don't need to think or anything. Just plug them in, set the settings, job done. Number 9 is your output frequency. So frequencies, different countries have different frequencies, and your settings, you've got 50 and 60. Now, if you're from the UK, Europe or Australia, just be careful with this one because it is preset to 60 Hertz. And if you're UK, European or Australian, you need 50 Hertz. So I'm going to set ours to 50 because we are UK. Now, the 60 Hertz one is typically used in USA and Canada. If you're unsure about your country, I'll put a link in the description which gives you a full list of every country and their frequencies, so you can check that. But just make sure you set that to the correct one. Next is program 11. Now, I get asked this a lot, what to set this to. This is the maximum utility charging. So basically this is the amount of amps that you want the charger to charge the battery at. If you've got the 2000 watt inverter charger, the max you can go to is 65 amps, and the 3000 watt charger is the max is 75 amps. Now you can charge at full whack if you wanted, that's up to you. We typically charge ours at like 20 amps, so it does take a while to charge. For healthier charging, you're better charging longer and lower ampage. Even for lithium, now lithiums can take high amounts of current to charge, but when we're on hookup, we're there for, you know, at least overnight or something, so we normally set ours to quite low. The other thing to be mindful of with this setting is check your battery's maximum charge current. It will state this in the specification. Like I'll show you here, our 200 amp hour battery, the max charge current is 100 amps. So obviously we can charge at full whack. Most batteries will, but just double check. Obviously the higher the amps charging your battery, the faster it's going to charge as well. It's your battery amp hours divided by your charge amps. So in our case, it's 200 amp hours divided by 20 equals 10 hours. So it's going to take 10 hours to charge from 0 capacity to 100 capacity on 20 amps. Now obviously we're not going to charge from 0 to 100% because we're never going to drop the battery to 0, but it gives you a rough idea how long it'll take to charge the battery. Okay, so program 12. Now you can only set this if you've got battery priority selected in program 1. Now typically you won't. In program 1, like I said before, you'll have utility priority. But if you do have battery priority, you can set the low battery voltage set point. Default is 11.5 volts, but again, check what your battery states and look for the undervoltage warning, which our battery, I'll show you here, is 12 volts. So we would set that to 12 volts if we're using battery priority. And same goes with program 13. You can only set this if you've got battery priority selected in program 1. This is your over voltage battery recovery. Now this should be stated in your battery spec again, so it will be stated as battery over voltage recovery. For our battery, the Renogy battery, it's 13.8 volts. I think default it's 13.5. So program 18 we've already actually gone to, and we've turned this off. Now the issue with 18, if you've got manual version 1.1, 18 is incorrect. So what 18 is in version 1.1 is alarm control stroke behavior, and it's not. In version 3 it's stated as the key sound control, which is what it is. It turns the key sound off, which is definitely what you want to be doing. So if you've got version 1.1, it's not what it's stated, it's the key sound control. And obviously just BOF is off, BON is on. Turn it off. 19 we set before is just your screen mode. So this just tells the inverter whether to return back to the screen or stay on the screen. Currently we want to stay on it while we're setting it up, and then at the end we'll turn it off. 20, like we did before, is LCD mode screen. So currently we're leaving it on while we're setting it up, and then later you can turn it off if you want. Just it saves a little bit of power, which is what we do. And then obviously when you come and click these buttons, it'll illuminate again and turn it on. 22, now this is another one which is incorrect in manual version 1.1. In that manual it's stated as the normal mode sound, whereas in version 3 it's the main switches to inverter sound, which is what this setting is. So it's not what it's stated in version 1.1. Now the default for this is on, which is that one. So what this actually means, it's the main switches to inverter sound. So it'll beep while the primary source, which is the AC, is interrupted. So if you're on hookup and it's interrupted, you'll get a beep. We're turning this off, mainly because we don't really need to know if it's gone off. I mean, it's mainly if you're like charging the batteries, and then if you lose power, you can obviously re-energize if it's tripped or something. This will actually start flashing like it is now because I'm not on hookup. When you're on hookup, this will stay on, and we'll notice that because we've got our switch in the van, so we'll notice if it just starts flashing. But yes, you can turn that on or off. Now program 25 is to record the fault code. Now I'm not 100% sure what this actually does, because if there is a fault it shows up on the screen, and obviously you just record it yourself, which you know what it's going to be and you'll look into it. So as a default it's set to disable anyway, and we've just left it off. Anyone I've dealt with that's had an error, like I say, it comes up on the screen, there's obviously an issue, so it just stays on the screen until the error's gone. So we just leave this as disabled. Program 26, this can only be set if you, in program 5, you set it to custom battery type. If you've got any other battery type, you don't need to do program 26, so you can skip it and you won't be able to select it anyway. And like I said before, I'll go into this setting in more detail in a different video. And the same with program 27, you can only set that if you've got custom battery type in program 5. So I'll skip over that for now, and I'll do that in a separate video. Program 29, now this is the low DC cutoff voltage. So what that means is the inverter charger will shut off the DC battery input, so basically turn off power from the battery at this set voltage. So what that means is it just stops your battery from being sort of fully depleted. Default it's set to 10 volts. Now at 10 volts, a 12 volt battery is 100% dead. You don't ever really want to drop to 10 volts. So I would recommend changing that to like 11.5, which is, even though it states in the manual that you can set it to 12 volts, our max is 11.5. So personally I would set it to 11.5, so it's not fully depleting the battery. And the other thing to note on this one is that this setting must be lower than the actual voltage set in program 98, which I will show you shortly. Now program 92, so the viewers that have got manual version 1.1 like me, you'll notice that this isn't in that manual. So when I found it on the inverter and it wasn't in the manual, obviously I've got in touch with Renogy, asked why, and then in manual version 3 it is in there, so you can see the details. So what this is, 92, you can only set this if you've got UPS set in program 3, which most people will, and it allows you to set the lower voltage limit. So there's like in UPS there's a tolerance, and this just allows you to set the lower voltage limit. Now I just recommend leaving this as default as 200 volts. The program 92 can only be found on the 230 volt models. So if you're from America or Canada and you get the 120 volt version, you won't have this option here. 93 is the input frequency range. So even though we set the frequency in program 9, which is either 50 or 60 Hertz, what this setting does is it gives you a range. So you've either got Gen, which is 50 Hertz and 60 Hertz, and ALT is more of like a special frequency. So it goes from 40 to 70. Now, typically and default, it's GEN. So if you're unsure, set to GEN. Now, electrical equipment will request the special frequency. So for this setting, if you've got special equipment plugged in, which generally won't be used in camper vans anyway, but if you do, it will specifically request this setting, so 40 to 70 Hertz. So if you're unsure, just check your appliance like specification or anything and it will tell you on there. 94 is only can be set if you've got custom battery set in program 5 again. So this allows you to set between lithium or other battery. So again, if you're not using custom battery settings, don't worry about this. If you are, go to the other video I'm making to do with custom batteries. Program 95, 96 and 97 are only used if you're going to be using the dry contacts, typically for use with generators and stuff. Now that's a bit more technical, so I'm not going to cover those in this video. I will do a separate video for these settings. So ignore 95, 96 and 97 if you're not needing to use the dry contacts. Program 98, this is the low voltage battery alarm. So when your battery reaches this voltage, which is very low, you will get an alarm because you're going to need to know that your battery, there's an issue somewhere or you've depleted it down and you need to recharge the battery. Now, when we did program 29, it did state that this one needs to be higher than program 29. At default, this is set to 10.5, and again, that's really like fully depleted. So what I'd recommend setting this to is 12 volts. So that at least that's about, for our battery, which is 200 amp hour, that's like 10%. We don't want to fully deplete. And we want an alarm before the battery's fully depleted. So I'd recommend setting this to about 12 volts. And the last setting is the AC output voltage. Now, if you have the 120 volt version, you can set this from 100 to 120 volts. If, like me, you've got the 230 volt version, you can set it from 200 to 240 volt. Now, again, I'd recommend leaving this, I can't remember what the default is actually on this because obviously I've changed the settings, but I'd recommend leaving this at 230 volts. What you can do is check all your appliances you're plugging in and then kind of do an average voltage. So you'll be surprised at what these voltage, what the appliances are rated at, and the average will probably be about 230 volts. Some things you plug in may require 220 volts. Not many things, but you can find ones that need 220. But if you're unsure, set it to 230 volts because that's sort of the nominal voltage for the UK. And then if I click off again, we go back to the start, and I can do that. And it takes me back to the beginning. So once all your programming is done and you're happy, then we just need to change a few things if you want to change them. So go into your settings, and then the only thing I'd recommend changing is maybe program 20. So go into 20 and then just switch that one off. So all that does, it turns the LCD screen off with inactivity. So if you just sit around here long enough, this screen will go off just to save a bit of power. Thanks for watching then, guys. If you've got any questions, or if you think there's any bits that I didn't cover, or there's anything you're querying, please just leave a comment. I'll answer all the comments and get back to you. So I'd appreciate your input if you have an input. My email address is in the description as well if you need, you know, any one-to-one support or help with that. So please just drop me an email, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye.